big thank you to Ubisoft for giving me the chance to dive into Star Wars Outlaws, because after a few days with it, this may just be the Star Wars game I was looking for. Outlaws is the first fully open world game in the Star Wars franchise, and is set somewhere between episodes 5 and 6 in the original trilogy. That doesn't mean that it's all nostalgia and no blaster though, and while there are some familiar planets and crime lords, this game adds new characters, stories, locations, and even creatures to the legendary universe.
What? You never make new friends?
Not just another Jedi and Sith tale of good versus evil, this is a chance to delve into the morally grey world of everything in between. Kay is certainly here to look out for herself, and her four-legged companion of course, as she lies, cheats and steals her way to each lucrative score. Being the scoundrel is great fun as you play the underworld, balancing faction reputation, choosing who to trust and who to betray, or simply eavesdropping on some other unscrupulous individuals to gain valuable intel.
He hangs around the back alley next to the market.
It's all a means to an end as you try to find that ticket to a new life on the starship that Kay has recently acquired. It's the best game from Ubisoft in a long time for me. One that's full of opportunity, both in-game and for photography. I know what you're expecting me to say next. Being a Ubisoft title, this must have exactly the same photo mode as some of their previous games, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because Outlaws arrives with a brand new photo mode, and it's one that boasts some pretty interesting features. This is indeed a new photo mode, though that does mean that there's quite a few rough edges. I expect most of these to be fixed quite quickly actually, but if not, some of the things to be aware of include the fact that inverting the Y-axis in the game causes the X-axis to be inverted in the photo mode, the new viewfinder UI is invisible, the golden ratio guide is incorrectly sized, and the camera controls can lose orientation in space. Most of these can be easily worked around though, and once you twiddle with the axis inversions, the camera movement is good. Range is admittedly limited, but it is a free cam, with full range of pan, tilt and roll. It also benefits from 3 different movement speeds. 1 times is normal, 2 times boosts the speed, and a 0.1 times slows it right down for more precise adjustment. The rest of the camera settings are found on the 3rd tab of the UI, not the first one which would be better, and include a selection of different lens presets. As well as the current in-game lens, there's 30, 50, 75 and 100mm, each with its own range of zoom adjustment. Weirdly, these zooms don't actually start at the lens's own value, but they do meet each other at the top and bottom of their range, effectively giving an overall zoom of 15 to 110mm. Would it be simpler as a single slider? Yes, absolutely. But this method does add the ability to swap quickly between specific lens types. Whichever lens you do use, it will have full depth of field control with aperture values down to f1.2 for shallow focus and a beautifully soft bokeh blur on the foreground and the background. Focus itself is manual in the first instance using a simple distance slider, but pressing square enters the viewfinder mode where there's several autofocus options. This mode will seem confusing at first, mainly because of that missing UI. But it's meant to resemble the optical viewfinder of a real camera. Thankfully, turning on the CRT-like scan lines option will overcome this bug and reveal all. Selecting either the 5-point or the 45-point mode will add a grid of focus detection points on the screen, and you can highlight any one of them with the D-pad to make it the active detection point for focusing. A fully custom mode also allows a single focus detector to be placed anywhere in the frame, and in each case the camera focus will snap to whatever appears in that region. It works really well and behaves with a continuous autofocus at the chosen detection point, well, until you reset the settings, and then it has to be done by pressing the set focus button. There are no clever tricks like phase detection or object tracking, but it's definitely a great way to easily focus on a subject and keep them sharp even as the camera moves closer or further away from them. The camera tab also has one other feature sat right at the top, and it's actually a second camera. Camera A and camera B can be positioned totally independently, and swap between at any time. All the other settings are shared though, so it's not quite like having two different setups to hand, and really only offers the chance to bank one composition while exploring others, but the potential is there. Lighting options in this photo mode are perhaps a little lacking in comparison, and I do feel harsh even saying that, considering that there is a full 24-hour time of day setting. The time of day actually does work beautifully outdoors or in space, but the truth is that a lot of your time and many of the interesting characters will be in places that the sun doesn't reach. Custom lighting would have been transformative in those scenarios, but I'm afraid you'll have to do without that. There is at least a strong set of image editing options with exposure, contrast and saturation, complemented by shadows, midtones and highlight sliders. These combine to give a basic curves control that can do quite a lot to balance or alter the brightness and contrast of a scene. Separate RGB color grading channels are also available, and the whole setup can be used together to create completely different looks or to enhance a particular style. For example, lowering the RGB settings along with a higher exposure can result in the same overall brightness, but gives a more matte effect to the shadows. It's very useful stuff, and it's just a shame that the individual steps are way too large and erratic for any fine adjustment. Elsewhere, there are visibility toggles for Kay and Nyx, some location-based messages, a single game logo, and a few compositional guides that can be overlaid on the image. Of these, the center cross and the thirds grid are obviously useful, but the inclusion of a golden ratio template is somewhat flawed. It's the wrong size for a start, as it doesn't fill the frame, and it cannot be flipped or mirrored as it would need to be for different subject positioning. Actually, size is a bit of a general issue here, as the UI does take up quite a lot of screen space, especially in the 16:9 mode, and it doesn't allow settings to be changed while it's hidden. There is an auto dimming feature that is presumably meant to help here, but that just creates an unnecessarily slow response when you manually hide the UI elements. And quite why every input has to make a distinct noise, I don't know. It maybe seems like a good idea in the rarely accessed menus, but in a photo mode it gets quickly irritating, so it's a good job that the results are worth it. It is a compliment to say that Star Wars Outlaws not only feels different to a typical Ubisoft open world game,
Wow.
but also manages to capture some of the essence of the original trilogy, particularly when played in the 21:9 mode that widens the field of view for a more theatrical frame. The new content feels close to those classic films, and for some, that might be reason enough to play and shoot the game, but this is not merely about fan service. Right from the start, it's impressive to see the array of intriguing stalls, bars and workshops that are busy with life and full of photographic potential. Heading out across the galaxy will lead you to some beautiful sights amongst the space debris, into inevitable dogfights, and take you to planets that are home to grassy savannas, lush jungles, and some more iconic barren landscapes. Settlements are also packed with the lawless merchants, bandits and bounty hunters that you'd expect, while the Empire facilities provide a contrasting military might and order. Of course, being a game about outlaws, a lot of the interest can be found with the different factions and crime lords, while Kay and Nyx themselves make a handy pair of subjects in any setting, especially with all the outfits and upgrades that are available to unlock. Simply being a part of that Star Wars underworld can be a huge source of inspiration. Whether on foot, speeder or a starship, with a sneaky approach or with blasters blazing, this scoundrel's journey is full of reasons to pull out the Photomod's virtual camera, and it would be criminal not to take advantage of them. Star Wars Outlaws opens up the criminal underworld of scum and villainy, and makes it a great place to play and to photograph. The brand new photo mode may need more refinement, but some good ideas and strong features make this an important step forward for Ubisoft, and it's one that virtual photographers can get a lot out of. Thank you so much for watching, and please do remember to subscribe to the channel for more virtual photography content.